I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone for coming and staying after the curriculum meeting. This is the largest crowd we've had in quite a while. If you would, if everybody hasn't signed in the back of the room, I'd appreciate it if before you leave you sign the guest list. Thank you. Mr. Basil, you want to call the roll, please?
Mr. Basil here. Mrs. Bites.
Here.
Mr. Doty.
Here.
Mr. Kurtz.
Here.
Mr. Rathkin.
Here.
Mr. Speed.
Here.
Mr. Podolsky.
Here.
Mr. Wolf. Mr. Martino.
Here. Under announcements, we have several agenda edits, so let me go through them. We're moving item 17A, the motion to approve the minutes of January 12th. We're moving that to the consent agenda. It will be item 8N. And just a comment to all board members, if you would, please submit any agenda items to Mrs. Kramer by Wednesday morning of the week prior to our meeting so we could try to avoid agenda edits. Another item, there will be an executive session after the voting meeting to discuss negotiations and some personnel issues. Item C, May 11th, Mrs. Torsha and I agree that our May 11th meeting is when we will honor local law enforcement. And I make this announcement publicly now because I said it at the Amity Township meeting the other night, so I'd like everybody to know. Also under announcements, I'd like to compliment Mr. Subers for his recent arbitration case presentation. Mr. Subers, nice job. Thank you. To all board members, there's a spring legal roundup being held by PSBA. Mrs. Bites and I have already signed up for it. If anyone else wants to, let Mrs. Kramer know. And I didn't notice on the agenda, Mr. Subers, I have to ask you, we have arbitration fees to pay and some back pay to pay. Will that require board approval and when?
Excuse me. They will require board approval. The payments, and if the board's prepared to move forward to that, I will request a motion under new business. But if not, you could wait until the next board meeting.
No, you could do it under new business if you're prepared with the numbers. Okay. That's all I have. Are there any other agenda edits?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to add something under enrollment and facility issues for new business. Enrollment and facility issues.
The procedures for public participation are contained in the inside cover of the blue cover letter for the agenda, which basically state, for those of you that haven't been here before, if you have any public comment to make at the time, come to the podium, make sure the microphone's turned on, state your name, your address, and you'll have 3 minutes to make a public comment. Are there any presentations by the public on any of the agenda items listed?
Beverly Albright, 239 Lilac Lane, Douglasville. Kind of a follow-up to the last. I think it's a comment we kind of ran over. wanted to thank Mrs. Torsha, your counterpart. It was an excellent presentation. It's extremely thorough, extremely well thought out, and to most of us in the audience, a no-brainer. I was extremely saddened that Mr. Martino said it couldn't be done by March 16th. I think that sometimes this board has an I can't attitude when in fact it could be done. And I know you said you wanted some data to compare us with Boyertown. Our children are not from Boyertown. It doesn't matter what their scores are. The data that Mrs. Torsha gave us distinctly showed that there was a decline once we started half-day kindergarten. And there's multitudes of data that will back that up. Doesn't matter, we can also compare ourselves to TE. We're never going to, this is Daniel Boone. These are the students we had, and these are the students we're here to help. So I think it's sad that we're not considering this further.
Thank you, Ms. Albright. Is there any other public comment at this time?
For 8H, we talked about this last time, but just in case anybody wasn't here, for the FBLA field trip, there is a chaperone going. The chaperone is paying for themselves too, but just in case you weren't aware, it's not just 2 kids going there, she's aware.
Thank you.
Ms. Formella.
Moving on to recognition for February.
Thank you, Mr. Martino. At the meeting tonight, I would like to recognize a group that often does all of the recognizing for all the other groups, and that's our Daniel Boone High School cheerleading squad. So why don't the girls come on in and file in the back so they can hear about all the wonderful things that they've been doing over the past year. Our cheerleading squad has raised $6,500 for breast cancer awareness. The competitions that they attended this year, Westchester Ruston, they placed first, and they've won the Spirit Award. In Avon Grove, they were first place winners. UCA Northeast Championship, first place, and a bid to the NHSCC in Orlando, Florida, which was the national, what's the H stand for? Okay, there, duh, Mrs. Torsha. National High School cheerleading competition. They competed in the Pocono Regional Championship, where they were first place again. Earned another bid to the NHSCC. First place in Game Day Division, and a bid to compete in the championship in Orlando, Florida. District 3, first place, an automatic bid to the PIAA State Championship. First DB team to win first place ever in districts. Exeter Cheer Challenge, first place. PIAA State Cheerleading Championship, they attended in Hershey, PA. 120 teams qualified. They competed against 39, some of the top teams in the country and state. Top 25% in each division advanced straight to finals. First time Daniel Boone advanced straight to finals. In finals, they hit a solid routine, moving up from 10th to 6th place. Congratulations. And National High School Cheerleading Championship. They finally did go to Florida. They competed in a small varsity non-tumbling division against 29 teams. They advanced from prelims to semifinals and then made it to the finals, and they placed 8th in the nation. They competed in the Game Day Championship division, which includes performing a sideline cheer, band dance, and big cheer. They finished 5th place in the nation for our Game Day performance. Berks County Cheerleading Championship, they placed 2nd in the Division 1 and had the 2nd overall highest score for the county. So quite an accomplishment that this group has done, and I thought that it would be nice to have them do something for us and maybe give us a cheer. Okay, go ahead. Do you girls want to introduce yourself so that we have a clue who you are? So why don't we, start up front and then go backwards? So I'm going to start with you. Up front with the H.
Oh, I'm Hannah. I'm in 9th grade. I'm Anna. I'm in 9th grade. I'm Gabby, and I'm in 9th grade. I'm Natalie, and I'm sophomore. I'm Sydney, I'm a junior. I'm Taylor, I'm a junior. I'm Olivia, I'm a freshman. I'm Christina, I'm a senior. said, I'm a senior. I'm Maddie, I'm a senior. Hi, I'm Caitlin, and I'm a senior. I'm Rachel, and I'm a senior.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Rathgab's daughter is up front right now. She just turned around.
Sure.
Yeah.
Dave, did you want to cheer with them?
Let's go, Blazers! Come on, DB! HS! Let's go, Blazers! Yell at DB! HS! Let's go, Blazers! Last time, DB! HS! Let's go, Blazers! Yeah! Fans! Stand up! Let me hear you yell blue! White! Blue! White! Blazers! You've got the tune! This time, yell Daniel Boone! Daniel! Come on, Boone! Who? Daniel! Boone! Blazers! All together, let me hear you yell blue! White! Come on, Daniel! Boone! Last time! Blue! White! Louder! Daniel! Boone!
Did you have another? Okay. Did you have another cheer, or that was it? Because I have something for you if you're done. Or did you have another cheer?
No, that's it.
That was it? Okay. On behalf of the administration and on behalf of the hard work that you have done, I would like to give you, it's something blue, your very own banner. And while you're still standing here, I have another announcement to make on behalf of all of our sports teams, which also includes you because you're huge. We have been given, board and community, the Sportsmanship Award in the county. That our teams, that all of the county athletic directors have recognized the Daniel Boone Area School District as having the best sportsmanship for the 14-15 sport year. So it was from last spring through this fall and through the winter. So congratulations to Ms. Goss and the wonderful students that come out. One more trophy to go into the trophy case. Thank you, girls. I appreciate your coming out here. I want to recognize the coaches in the back. Just give a little wave. All the hours that they put in. So, thank you. Thank you very much. And Caitlin Rathgab, just wave your hand because we have a board member's child who's in there. So. Good job, girls. Congratulations. Thank you. You might want to give that back to Miss Goss then, the banner. Yeah, she might want that. You can take it out in the hall and look at it if you want to. All right. That's all I have, Mr. Martino. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dorsey.
I'd like to provide entertainment a little bit.
Group's good too. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is now items 8A through 8N.
I'd like to make a motion to approve items 8A through N.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rathgib, second by Mr. Kurtz.
Yeah, he has mic on.
And then any comments, questions, or discussion? Is everyone consent that everything belongs in the consent agenda? Okay. Mr. Basil?
This will be a unanimous vote for approval unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
I have a question. I know the vote just passed, but I saw the DCIU requires 2 votes. Does one of those need to be a roll call?
Yes, that does.
Yes.
We're getting there. I would just like to say, great job on the minutes, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Kowski.
I'm sorry about that too, but on the minutes, I don't know if we just approved these or if they're up later for approval. Okay, I won't talk too much about them. There were a few grammatical errors. A lot of them, like quotations, were not marked as quotations, and it just kind of feeds right in. Like Kramer said, Kurt doesn't reply. Like it was.
Can you cut that mic?
Never mind. I'm sorry.
Can I ask why, when I said, is there any discussion, questions, or comments?
That was a little bit.
You didn't have that then?
I saw at the end we had for approval minutes, but we moved that, so it's fine.
Mr. Basil?
Shouldn't have said anything.
Sorry. I'm just amazed that the minutes went right through. Yeah.
And ready for the BCIU individual votes?
Yes.
Okay. Andrew Basil, yes. Carol Bites?
Yes.
Mike Wolf, is that? Richard Martino?
Yes.
Ryan Doty?
Yes.
Larry Speed?
Yes.
Connor Kurtz?
Yes.
David Rathke?
Yes.
Tamara Twardowski?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Are we okay with that now? Item 9 is presentations by board members. Mr. Basil, is there any secretary correspondence?
Yes, actually, we did receive some correspondence. The Department of Education provided to us their acknowledgement of receipt of the PlanCon Part K project refinancing for the bond refinance that we recently completed. We also received a thank you note from the Blazer Foundation. Ms. Torsha and administration, thank you for your generous donation to the Blazer Foundation in honor of the Daniel Goes School of Directors. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Basil. Is there a Berks County Intermediate Unit Board report?
Thank you, Mr. Martino. A very brief one. I was running a little late getting to the curriculum meeting, so I ran out of the house quickly. But one thing that we did have a discussion about that I thought was actually very intriguing to me. I think a couple of the other members of the board. One of the pre-K classes up in the Lehigh IU has actually started a pilot program, I believe funded by the Public Broadcasting Services, to do actually, the pre-K kids are actually doing some STEM work in the sciences and mathematics. And I had to say to myself, how can these kids, what possibly could they be doing? And the examples that were given to me were, for example, they would take a dollhouse. How would you construct it? How they actually via playing, they're looking into the sciences pieces of some of these. Of course, me being the smart aleck that I am, my comment was, I can see the boys trying to destroy the house, that being the engineering side of it. But the IU here is actually looking into bringing some of that down to the pre-K here. It is an ongoing experiment. So they're looking into this. So as we get more information, I'll try to bring that back here to Boone, and maybe that's something that we could actually start to look into kindergarten. It doesn't have to be just pre-K. I can see that as applications to our kindergarten as well. So I thought that was actually pretty interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Rathke. Any comments or questions for Mr. Rathke? Mr. Kurtz? No, did you have any comments or questions?
Why would I have questions?
Do we have a Berks Career and Technology Board report?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Martino. I actually, as the alternate, filled in for Ms. Twardowski on January 28th, the Joint Operating Committee. And the biggest thing was the work session where we discussed the budget. I didn't bring that with me. I wasn't prepared to talk about it. So, but we did go through the budget. They also talked about like a mileage reimbursement rate. They increased that to match the federal rate. Most of the things there are very procedural and kind of, it's a matter of business. But they did present the budget, which will be voted on in the next meeting. Maybe at a meeting in between, I can't remember.
On Wednesday, so I'll let you know.
Yeah, I was going to say it's coming up. So that will be, I'm sure, coming soon for us to vote on as a board.
Thank you, Mr. Doty. There's no student government report tonight. A legislative report, all I want to say is Harrisburg has not changed. The governor wants to sell the liquor stores. The Senate wants to eliminate property taxes, and the House doesn't want to do either. So I don't know what impact that's going to have on our budget. Right now, we're assuming, I guess, Mr. Small, that we'll be held harmless and we'll get what we got last year. We're hoping. But with looking at what's happening in Harrisburg, I don't know that we're going to know that even by June 30th. So we'll see. That's all I have as far as the legislative report. Ms. Schroeder, do you? I'm sorry.
I just want to remind the public if they want to voice their concerns about the Common Core curriculum, they should be in contact with the Education Committee in Harrisburg. On a regular basis, they're looking for stories, good or bad, about the impact of the curriculum, the standards, as they are being translated, the effect on your children.
Ms. Schroeder, do you have a report or? No? That's fine. Are there any other board member reports? Let me say something to Mr. Kurtz about the curriculum committee. I don't know where Mrs. Torscher wants to go with this full-day kindergarten presentation, whether she wants to bring it back to a curriculum meeting or get the data that was requested and present it to the full board. I mean, that's going to be your choice. But moving forward, if full-day kindergarten is not taken up the next curriculum meeting, there are a lot of things that we've had previous discussions on that we've never finalized, and rather than go into it all now, here's a list. And I'd like to see us finalize some of these things before we start moving into new territory.
All right. Thank you.
Are there any other reports or questions or comments about the reports that were given? Seeing none, we'll move on to building and grounds. Is there anything to report on facilities?
Yes, the facilities committee did meet a couple weeks ago. Sorry. And sorry.
There's a list.
We did have a list. It was a pretty lengthy meeting, and I think the next one's going to be pretty lengthy too. But we had talked some about some of the contracts, maintenance contract updates, and they are in the, I think Mr. Small and with Mr. Suber's help and also Casey's help are finalizing what we do and don't have to pay for, and we'll be seeing some savings on that. We did a couple things that we did look at was security systems and a tri-state elevator contract update. We do have to have the elevators inspected 4 times a year, I believe it is, under the state licensing requirements. So there is a contract coming up, and I think it's going to be on March, or did we need it done? I was thinking we needed it done in March. Okay, but for the 7 locations, I believe, according to my notes, it was going to be $885 a quarter. One of the other things that Casey is looking at is a district-wide key system upgrade. There's some concerns. Don't really know what keys are out there. So he's looking at the most inexpensive way to really secure out the buildings, and going to come back with a proposal for how many doors we will need rekeyed and that kind of thing. And he's trying to figure out. There's a lot of doors. It was 12 at Birdsboro, 23 at Monocacy, 20. I think at Amity, 33 in the middle school, 45 in the high school, and at 12 I can't even read my handwriting. Somewhere else, sorry. So there was a lot of keys. He's trying to figure out how many doors we really need in each building that we can rekey. And then he's also looking at the long term of either swipe cards or some other type of system. But in the immediate future, he wants to at least rekey some of the doors to secure the buildings. There's also, we talked about an underground fuel tank in BC that we have to look at removing. So they're getting some information on that. We talked about gymnasium lighting upgrade and a proposal for that. And the board, the committee did recommend the AEC gymnasium lighting upgrade. I think most of the stuff's going to come in March, but it was discussed. We talked about the parking lot drainage at Monocacy. He thinks that's going to be around $23,000. There's a problem with an underground spring, and it keeps breaking up the parking lot. So they had kind of put together a proposal to have that. They're going to have to cut it out, do some stormwater work. I don't know, is he here? He might go. Sorry, you weren't here. Sure. Can you speak to that a little bit more? I'm sorry. I'm butchering this, I think.
Just real quick, the Monocacy, there's an underground spring that's continually freezing the upper lot, and that is where everybody exits the school. We've spent not a lot of money, but we've spent money on continually salting the lot for safety reasons. The macadam is failing, so we need to remove a large section of the parking lot, install some trenching underground, and tie it into the storm sewer catch basin that currently exists that's in that area. But the macadam is going to be fixed here in the near year or two anyway, so we might as well resolve the issue underground. So once we put new macadam there, we're fine. And just on the light upgrades, we're looking at taking out a maintenance headache for us and putting in LED fixtures. The payback's roughly about 3 years. From the maintenance savings to the cost of the fixtures and everything. We're looking at doing that pretty much school district wide as funds are available and where it makes sense. So this is kind of the first one. We had an engineer come in and do a whole light layout, savings payback, the whole 9 yards. So it's taking some time, but we're going to start picking away at some of these things. Any questions from anybody?
Mr. Blankenman, let me, and none of us were on the board at the time, but for the money we spent on the Monocacy Elementary Center, should not the architect or the builder or someone have known about this underground spring that keeps freezing?
From what I've been informed from the staff that was here before I was, is still here, that was been a problem since day one. And that's all I can tell you. I don't know why it was never resolved from the time the school was built. So I'm going by what the employees here are telling me that have been here for 15, 12 years. That we're there during construction, after construction. That's always been an issue over there, from what I've been told.
Thank you.
Just a couple other brief things, and I think from my notes he had anticipated that most likely the Monocacy parking lot issue will be probably in the $23,000 to $25,000 range. They would like to do that over the summer, obviously, when the school's closed. I believe the lighting upgrade, we were looking at around $10,000, I think, from my notes. Also, we'll be seeing a contract next month with building, sprinkler, and fire pump inspections, and that's going to be roughly around I'm going to say $5,300 between the two of them. $2,820 for one and $2,400 for the other. And we did talk about the flagpole light out here at APC. The cost estimate was roughly $3,000 to put lighting out there so that it can be lit all night long. The committee's recommendation is that we just continue to raise the flag in the morning and put the flag down at night rather than spending $3,000 unless the board feels strongly that they would like to have it lit all night. That was the recommendation. And the Rage Soccer Club is no longer going to be using the field at the high school, so we won't be seeing that agreement again. And lastly, we did meet with, we had a couple come in that were interested in potentially renting this facility a few nights a week to provide a martial arts class to the area. And they run programs in other places around. I think they have one in Lancaster. They'd like to start one here. The committee all thought that it was a great idea to offer, the classes and potentially get some revenue. We would have to look at what the cost would be. They were looking really to start out with just 2 nights a week in the gym. I also mentioned that I needed to put a call into Amity Township, and I apologize just with my schedule during the day and work. I haven't been able to call them during the day, but to see if that would trigger the driveway improvements, because we obviously can't give them an answer on anything until we would know whether or not Amity would allow us to do that without triggering that two-way road that we found out about last month. So there'll be more on that, but it was, they had a great presentation. It seemed to be well thought out, and it would be a great opportunity for the kids, but we just needed to make sure that it was okay with the township. So I think that's everything I have for now.
Thank you, Ms. Radowski.
I have a question for Mrs. Radowski. Did the committee consider the resolution from October where we voted that we would try to rent out the upstairs here also?
We did talk about it briefly. We didn't discuss it in detail because that's also on my list to talk to Amity about.
Okay.
What's going to trigger what we can do with it, what we can't do with it. So okay. I really need to get in touch with the zoning officer and the manager over there.
The meeting Mr. Small and I attended, my understanding is if we do anything commercial, anything that's not considered educational, we would have to fix the driveway. But you could double check that.
Well, I was looking at it from an ADA accessibility standpoint as well, and some other, and what uses are allowed by right, that kind of thing. So,
let me make one comment. As a veteran, the flying of the flag is very important to me, and the guidelines for display of the flag call it to be flown from sunrise to sunset. And there's too many afternoons I come here and there's no flag flying. So we either need to spend the $3,000 or have some procedure in place to have the flag up when it's supposed to be and stay up until it's supposed to come down. Any other, pardon me? I come costly. Any other questions for Mr. Radowski?
Actually, I had a couple questions. You mentioned that there's going to be some savings from the maintenance contract updates. Was there any estimate as to what those savings might be?
Potentially 6 figures.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty significant. When would we
I should say it, over a 10-year period that those contracts, or 15-year, those contracts were in place.
So it's a cost avoidance of 6 figures over 10 years?
I think some of those were 10, 15-year agreements.
I see. Okay.
Casey can speak to that, sorry.
The service contracts that we have currently, the savings over 10 years could potentially be $600,000 or more. So we're looking at saving a minimum of $50,000 a year from the existing contracts that we have. If things work out the way I believe we can have them work out and perform a lot of the duties with in-house staff, the savings may be as much as $70,000 to $80,000 a year.
Okay. Second question, do we currently have a key protocol somewhere?
Two voice cards, I'll just talk without it. Currently, right now, no. That is something will be implemented with the new key system. So I will be the key cop, if you want to call it that. I will be tracking every key. Currently, we do not know what keys open what. We do not have a key log with a door number that says these keys open this door on any exterior door. Our staff knows, for the most part, but if somebody came to me and said, hey, I need a key for so-and-so, I cannot sit in my office and say, I know this is the key. I have to literally take my key ring and go to that door and figure out which key opens it. So the intent is to limit the access to the outside of the building through, I'll use the high school, maybe 10 or 12 doors. I have a resident of Daniel Boone is a security expert who I have dealt with in the past. He is going to come here and do a security audit for free because he is a taxpayer of the school district. He is paid lots of money by other school districts to come in and do those things, but since he is a resident, he is doing it for us for nothing. My intent was to have him here this week, but with the snow we've had the last couple of weeks, I haven't had the time to set things up with him. He is a professional. This is what he does, so I will use his judgment on that, on what doors should have access from the exterior. Every door will still be able to open from the interior out for fire reasons, but we do not need to have every single door have access from the outside. We need to be able to control the access points of people coming in our buildings. So at that point, I can give a concrete cost once I have his analysis of our schools to the committee to say this is what our cost will be. Right now, I've kind of given them an estimate based on every single door, so it's a worst case scenario.
Will that be a written proposal that he's providing, or is it just sort of, okay. I just want to make sure from a liability standpoint that we're getting recommendations as to what doors should be open or closed. Is there some sort of legal perspective on this in terms of what we actually receive and act on?
I think it's going to be discretionary. I mean, the only potential liabilities where there is an imminent danger that's identified that we were purposefully ignored. But I think, I guess we really would take it one step at a time and see what's in the report. But certainly something that should be given proper deliberation and consideration. But the liability doesn't necessarily immediately arise from any report that we receive.
A couple other quick questions. In terms of the gym lighting upgrade, have you guys reached out to MedEd or anybody about rebates and what rebates may be available to
That is all part of the payback. The engineer that I use to do all my lighting thing, he does all of the rebate information for us. So he tells us what rebates are available. He fills the paperwork out. He submits it. I can't buy the fixtures cheaper than what I can buy them from him because they're buying in such large quantities. So with them providing us the fixtures, they're providing us all the engineering, all of the rebate information, and they take care of it from start to finish.
Okay. And then, let's see, last but not least, the underground spring. I recall this being an issue when I first got on the board, and I got to believe there's some sort of written record of us dealing with this with the municipality and the engineers that were in charge, the project manager that was in charge of the job, that we should probably look up. I'm a little unwilling to go out and spend $23,000 to fix a problem that maybe somebody else that we were paying considerable fees to should have addressed at the time of construction.
I agree. That's why I was asking, shouldn't someone have been aware of this?
Just to let you know, the architectural firm that designed the school reached out to me about 2 weeks ago, and they stopped in just to say, hey, this is what we've done for the school district. district. I had brought that up to them and some other couple things that I saw. They're looking through their notes to see what they may have, because there's a highway permit as well that has not been finalized with them, that they are now pushing the issue with the people who they hired to do that for them. They were not aware that those issues were not resolved. So I'm waiting to hear back from them on that as well.
Casey, what year did all this take place?
It was like 2007, 8 was the end of the construction period.
If I remember seeing the drawings, that's what the dates were on the drawings.
Yeah, but I mean, when would they have done the engineering studies? It would have been before that, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I believe Ken Smith's father was somehow involved, and he's still mobile.
He might have been the clerk of the works. I think he was the clerk of the works, probably.
Yeah. So we can certainly call him up and see what information he has as well. But there should have been a GC on the job that would have been responsible for making sure that problem had been resolved.
And I just started going through all the prints and books and everything that I have, so I'm trying to find info if there is any there.
Well, keep us up on that, please. Thank you. Anything else on building and grounds?
I think that was enough for now.
Yeah.
Moving on to financial approvals, is there a motion to approve the course and credit request?
I'll make a motion to approve 11A.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rathkip, second by Mr. Kurtz. Comments or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Basil?
This will be unanimous. This will be a unanimous vote for approval unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Is there a motion on personnel approval?
I'll make a motion for 12A through C.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Fradowski, second by Mr. Kurtz. Discussion or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Basil?
And a motion for 12A through C. This will be a unanimous vote for approval unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion approved.
There's nothing listed under programs. Is there anything to discuss in the programs?
No, I have nothing at this time.
Mr. Wolf isn't here. Is there anyone on the policy committee that wants to explain why this has gone back to a first reading?
I could tell you a little bit, and perhaps Mrs. Weiss could chime in, or Mrs. Twerkshow. But there was one very minor change that was made. I don't know off the top of my head what exactly it was, but I don't think any of us on the committee had a problem with it.
The limits of liability.
Limits of liability, which I think was a technical aspect that we had to just tweak a little bit. So I believe that was the only change.
That was for the insurance policy.
Right.
This is the policy that will not go away.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I mean, I thought we had it resolved, and now it's back to a first reading. Is there anything under transportation? Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. I had mentioned this once before. We voted in the beginning of the year on an official newspaper, and we voted to make the Reading Eagle our official newspaper. The Reading Eagle hasn't had a reporter here at probably half of our meetings. Now, I realize we advertise through the Reading Eagle, but I would just like the board to think about whether we want an official newspaper that doesn't show up at our meetings. We could discuss that at a future meeting. Moving on to item 16B, the long-awaited presentation on school property taxes by Mr. Kurtz.
Well, it'll have to continue to be a long-awaited presentation. Here's the issue. I put together a spreadsheet a while back with historical tax data for every school district in Berks County going back to, I think, 1992 or 1991. And unfortunately, the website I received that information from, which is a state website, was lacking some information from some school districts, which to me is hard to believe, considering it's a state site that districts have to submit their information to. After a conversation with the business office, we do want to just make sure that the information is 100% accurate, so we can get that extra information information from those missing districts. The problem is when you don't have that information, it changes the average for the county, and the presentation included information on county averages. So thousands of points of data later, it looks like I'll be making some revisions there with help with our business office. But I will, instead of just pushing this meeting after meeting, I will let Mr. Martino know when I'm ready to make that presentation. It started out as a fun weekend project, putting this information together. It's not so fun anymore, but hopefully the information will be helpful.
Mr. Kurtz, you might want to just consider putting an asterisk next to the years in question. And if you have a general trend that you're talking about, a couple of points in the percentage average isn't going to make a difference. So if you want to move it forward, it's just a thought.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Kurt.
I think we have plenty to talk about to keep us busy tonight.
Moving on, new business. Is there a motion to approve the revised contract for the transition house?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Basil, second by Mr. Radowski. Discussion, questions?
I just have one. I don't know if it's as much a question as a comment, but I know it came up before. There were questions about the rate at which we were charging the BCIU for different utilities. That was probably over a year ago we talked about that. I'm not sure if that's been changed, if it's decided we shouldn't change it, if there's any feedback.
We raised the
just tap it. Or not. Yeah, maybe.
We did raise the lease $100 a month for this coming year, and then the next year they will be paying the utilities themselves, which we figured about, I think, $200 to $250 a month for utilities. So they asked if we would consider kind of splitting it for the first year. The other difference is that the lease currently runs February or March to February, or we're going to change that to run with the school calendar or the school budget cycle. So this year lease will actually run from whenever it starts to June of 2016. So it'll be a year and 5 months or something, just to get it in line with the other contracts and budgets.
All right, great, thank you.
Any other
question on the contract? So the contract that we're proposing will terminate on June 2017. Will there be some discussion prior to the renewal of this as to whether or not we should be holding that property or getting rid of it? Because I think we're going to talk to the township and see if there was a requirement for the parking.
Well, it'll still come up. It will still come up for signature. So in June of 2016, we'll have to enter into a yearly contract for 2017. It's just that this is like a 16-month contract instead of a 12. So the agreement will come back up yearly. It's just when so it will be up for discussion, yes, for the committee and the board.
Okay.
And I actually had talked to Lauren at the last facilities, or Mr. Small's last facilities meeting, to see if he could kind of pull the file from when the stadium and stuff was up, and see if we can find notes or this kind of thing.
Looking into that.
We are looking at that, but currently it was joined with the high school property. So in order to sell that again, we would have to go through the subdivision process. We'd have to subdivide it, and so there'd be a cost for that, probably, I would guess, $30,000 to $50,000, and then if we can. So we are exploring that.
Okay, and we'll keep an eye on like the market value. If we get a tweak on that, it's 511 Chestnut. Is that correct?
It doesn't have its own address anymore. It's part of the high school. It does. That's what I'm saying. It's not its own parcel. It was actually joined with the high school to figure into the acreage and all that for the high school project. So.
Well,
Not only that, Mrs. Bites, Dan, you were saying about the question of holding on to it. My understanding from sitting at the committee meeting is that when we built the stadium, we were required by the Union Township to have additional parking. we've contracted with the swim club up there at Immaculate Conception to use their parking. But if they ever decide to back out of that contract, we need this ground, is my understanding.
And has that been reviewed?
Well, that's what I had asked, if we can look through the file, and if we can't, then we'll go to the township and look at their files. But if it was part of the land development, there should be a note on a plan somewhere, or as part of the township's approval process, it should state that. So I figured we'd look through what we have first before we go bug them.
Okay.
And then if we can't
We have
find
plenty
it,
of time if we're agreeing to renew this now. And just for the record, we're a constricting school district. We're losing 50 a year. I'd like to start talking about absolving some of this real estate holdings, this fortune that we've built in real estate. And I appreciate that you consider that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Basil?
Let's get a motion. Motion made by Mr. Basil and second by Mr. Radowski to approve the transition house lease. This will be a unanimous vote for approval unless I hear votes to the contrary. And hearing none, motion passes.
And now the next item under new business is Mr. Basil, you had an agenda edit on enrollment and facilities use.
Yes, so at the last meeting, we had a discussion about the enrollment numbers, and I think it forwarded around to the board a spreadsheet I put together years ago, which had all the different enrollments going back 10 years or so, or longer, 11 years. And it's something that I kind of keep my eye on, and it struck me as I was reviewing this the other day, back when we closed APC to do the renovations in 2009, we were able to put our student body into the remaining buildings. And the following year, we were having a budget crisis, and the discussion came up on whether or not we should even reopen APC at the time. And I'd have to say, for more than, probably just for political reasons, other than no other, the board voted to move back into the building just because I think, at least what was acknowledged at the time, doing so, if they hadn't moved back into the building, if they kept the building closed, if they just spent $9 million renovating, it would be very embarrassing. So we opened the building back up again to sit in it for 3 years when we didn't really need to, and spent a considerable amount of money. When we closed it in 2013, we saved $666,000. Looking back at it now, had we closed the building and kept it closed, we probably would have saved ourselves at least $1.5 million that would be sitting in our general fund balance today. I have to wonder with our enrollment where it is today, whether we ought to be closing the building going forward, starting next year. I'm looking at where we have significant capacity in both the middle school, Birdsboro, AIC, and I just wonder if we shouldn't be moving our 5th grade to the middle school and opening up our Amity Intermediate Center and Birdsboro Elementary Center and moving the students from Monocacy into those 2 buildings. We have the capacity to do it. The occupancy rates in those buildings would be around 85%. And I think that if we're looking at declining enrollment going forward, it makes sense to be considering that today. I think that it would be significant savings for the school district over the next couple of years that we will need going forward into the future, whether it's for capital improvements or it's to be used to address the ever-growing PSERS liability or the medical insurance obligations that we have to our employees. So I'm bringing it up tonight to put in front of the board, start looking at these numbers and start discussing it, because if it's something that's feasible, I think it's something we ought to really consider. Nobody has to comment.
No, I was waiting for the microphone to go on.
Like that, but I just want people to think about it and we can look at the numbers.
Consultants to start putting those numbers together for us, what you have and what the savings would be and what all the constraints are and what consideration.
Are you talking for the 16, 17 school?
No, you're talking about 15,
No, I'm
16.
talking about
sorry,
15,
15,
16. I'm
16, sorry.
talking about
Okay.
September.
Okay.
Right at the beginning of this meeting, Mr. Basil had mentioned this to me, and that ties in, and that's why I said we need data on enrollment. All ties in with kindergarten, because if we were to expand to full-day kindergarten, that has an implication on your proposal. So, I mean, it all ties together, and there's a lot of data that needs to be gathered in order to make an informed decision. So, I mean, it's all Mr. Basil's doing is bringing that up tonight to begin the process.
I think, look, it's easy to open a building. It's difficult to close one, according to state regulations. And there's a timeline that has to be followed, as we're all aware. And I just think we ought to start the process. I think there's no harm in doing the due diligence, and I think, quite frankly, we have a fiduciary responsibility to do it. And, I think, in my personal opinion, if we can close a building and save those dollars, and those dollars can be used on program instead of supporting a bricks and sticks facility, then I think those dollars are better used in supporting program. And the board can always vote to keep the building open at the end of the day. But
What would the time frame?
well, my recollection when closing ATC is that the board would have to start that process officially in March. And with a cooling off period, I think it's like 90 days, 3 months, which takes you into May, June, at which point the board would vote whether or not to close a building or keep a building open. And then we have a 90-day notice period to any employees that would have to be notified if a job was lost due to a building closure. And that has to be done, obviously, prior to the start of the school year. So I think March is the latest that you can wait to start this process. And when we closed APC, I think we started that dialogue beginning of February. So.
Well, I was just wondering if we had time, and
It would be very, very tight.
We would need to start advertising stuff, I would guess.
We need all those numbers, with all due respect, Mr. Basil, verified by the business office. And I'd also like to see Mr. Sullivan's projection, the model that he built when he was here. Make sure that's projections for enrollment updated. Is that being updated? Is that being maintained by the business office? Okay, so we would just want to make sure that that model was incorporated in our projections.
That model, Mr. Small, was simply based on birth rates. Is that not right?
That's very simple.
Yeah, it was birth rates in the district, in townships in the borough, and it was based off of survival rates averaged over 5 years.
And in terms of the numbers, I mean, it's something that the business office has been looking at over the last 4 months, something we've been talking about in the finance committee meetings going back to last August. So,
just hope that can be provided for the full board.
Sure, absolutely. As a matter of fact, they've sort of been embedded into the 5-year models, the 5-year budget models that the board has already been privy to for the last few years. So, the last few months. So I don't think that's going to be an issue to bring those numbers forward if necessary.
Thank you.
Any comments, questions, discussion? Seeing none. Presentations by the public on any issue.
Excuse me, Mr. Martino, I was going to raise those
Oh, I'm
two
sorry.
motions.
Yes.
The first motion that I would present for your consideration would be to approve payment to arbitrator Lawrence S. Coburn in the amount of $4,843.12, representing the district's 50% contribution to the arbitration costs.
So moved. Were you done with the motions? Fine. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kurtz, second by Mr. Doty. Questions or comments?
This is her contractual obligation, correct?
Yes. Yes. Mr. Basil?
This will be a unanimous vote for approval unless there are votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
And the second item I would present for board consideration would be payment to D. Stamey in the amount of $613.91 pursuant to arbitrator Covern's February 19, 2015 award.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kurtz. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Doty. Any questions? For the record, this was part of the award by the arbitrator. Mr. Basil?
This will be a unanimous vote unless there are votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
And now, presentations by the public on any issue.
Jennifer Harding, Amity Township, 103 Boston Drive. I have 3 questions or 3 points. Mrs. Sorsha, I'm sorry I missed your presentation. I had a library board meeting yet. It was awesome. I think you guys should really consider full day K. My son was the first class to do half day K. My daughter's coming up. She could really do a full day K. You guys really need to go. You should. Anything on Common Core opt-out? ATC meeting, a lot of parents want to opt out with Common Core. So you guys got to think about what you're going to do when parents start saying we want to opt out, because you guys got to go provide a classroom for parents that want to opt out. So which means you got to provide a classroom, a teacher, and materials for that. It's mandated by the state. And with closing a school, if you close Monocacy, does that mean we are redistricting? Because you're closing the school in the middle, you're taking all the 5th graders out. Are we redistricting? Because you can't shuttle all the kids from Russell South to Birdsboro. They're not all going to fit.
I believe if, and like I said, we need a lot of data before we close the
you are going to need
school.
a lot of data.
The lines would have to be redrawn because you're going to have some of what would be in Monocacy for now go to Birdsboro and some into Amity, and that is only preliminary because if enrollment continues to decline, it may eventually be Monocacy that stayed open and another school that closed.
Yes, well, that was my question, because when APC closed, I'd asked if we were going to redistrict, and that was one thing that nobody wanted to do because of the cost of having to redistrict. They said, no, we're just going to close, we're just moving because it's all the same area, but with closing Monocacy and leaving AIC, or AEC and MEC open, or BEC open, you're closing the one in the middle that we're still using. And that would also affect MEC as an ex-ED school and getting all that extra funding too, I believe.
There are a lot of questions that have to be answered.
I have a question real quickly on that, Mrs. Sorsha. I understand we have the Compass Learning Program district-wide right now. Would that qualify as a suitable mechanism for students who opt out of the East End and all the diagnostic testing?
I wouldn't be able to answer that right now, Mrs. Bites. I don't have an answer for that.
Yes, Mr. Templin.
Barry Templin, East Main Street, Union Township. Did anybody check before we're doing anything with the spring with Denmark? I'm sorry, Denmark. No, I still. DEP, before we do anything with the spring, that we're allowed to even touch an underground spring or anything of that nature?
We'd have to get a permit.
No.
We'd have to get the appropriate paperwork and permits.
All right.
But we're just in the exploratory phase.
All right. And so I heard a lot of good things about this spring. Employees knew the history. This is what we think we should keep in mind here. Our longevity of our employees know history. Our well-trained employees, all these years, know the history of these schools. And also, I also heard of saving money for in-house staff. That's another wonderful thing we better keep in mind. I think we better keep this in mind with everything all our supportive staff, especially when we start thinking about outsourcing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tim. Any other public comment?
Try again. Mr. Basil, I just have a quick question. I know you have to go and you have to get like all the paperwork and figure out mathematically about closing schools and stuff, but would it be possible to get the math of the difference between closing BEC and NEC, and show if you were to keep NEC open either way, but if you close BEC, this is how much money it would be for the district. If you close NEC, this is much. Just because BEC has had a lot of work on it, but NEC is also newer, so they're both kind of in a weird boat to close at this point. So I think if you could show everybody the differences, and I think we can kind of get on board with you.
Yeah, we've actually had those numbers.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Is there a motion to did you have a question?
I was going to say, yeah, if our student members are interested in those numbers, those numbers can be forwarded on to the student board members too, right? Seeing as they're public records. All right, that might be helpful. That might help.
Yeah,
Evaluation.
Ms. Sweet, the big thing with the numbers is the capacity of Monocacy is not as large as the capacity of Birdsboro. So the question would be is what would fit where?
Yeah, and the only thing I'm thinking is when we closed APC, a lot of, at least students, were upset because we put all the money into APC and renovating. So I'm thinking that if you can really show everybody that, this is how much, it's not going to really hurt us, even though we just built NEC and we just put money into BEC, it's not going to hurt us that much. We probably won't get as much mistake as you got when you closed APC, even though we're still renting and stuff.
I think the issue is it's money invested into the schools is sunk cost. Okay, people have to recognize that money's gone. So now what we're doing is we're trying to look forward and what's the best use of our money this year, next year, the year after. And if there's an opportunity to avoid certain costs, large costs going forward, and we can take those dollars and put them, maybe they have a bigger impact, then let's go capital action. It's probably a better way of spending our dollars. And I think as Mr. Martino put it, right now it's a question of capacity. With the number of students we have today, they wouldn't fit in an MEC, AIC combination. There's just too many students. Because MEC only holds 450 students, but Birdsboro only holds 650. So it's a significant increase. And there's only 380 students in Birdsboro now, so just a little over half. So just from a logical standpoint, it makes sense to students would be in BEC to start, and then if enrollment continues to decline going forward, then the theoretical question of which building is going to require more maintenance and more capital investment going forward would certainly play into that discussion, 2 to 3 years out. But we're going to have, if the board's willing, we'll have all this information out there, and we'll be discussing it in detail going forward. So good questions. Thank you.
Yeah, their questions and concerns are very valid.
Good job.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you all for coming.